on the
Driving
tractors. And by the time we got back in, Donna had all the milkers put together and had started the milking. And so years later, I said, Donna, you were so young, and that milking machine was not that easy to put together.
We had to take it down and clean it afterwards every time, and then you
Right.
put them all back
Right.
together and put them out
Right.
there where they belonged
Yeah.
instead of in the sinks on the racks.
It was not an easy thing to do for, she was not probably 12 years old. And I said, she said, yes, it was hard, but I was so proud that I could do it. And I thought, what
What a way we could all take that as a lesson now.
that's right.
Yeah.
Kids need to feel like they're accomplishing something.
I remember helping with the chickens a lot when I was that age. Because I remember Grandma would be out there chopping the chicken heads off,
Mhm.
and then the chickens would flop around, and
Right,
then we all get them and start.
right.
That last year we milked before he sold the cows when it was just
Roger and
you and me, basically, and yeah, Roger helped sometimes. Sometimes it was just the two of us. But we were milking and we needed a little more help. We had to be in school at a certain time, so we and we were living at the big house, so we had to drive back and forth. And Grandma helped once. I'll help you.
She always wanted to help.
She wanted to help, and of course, when you open the door and the cows to let them out, and they don't go out like bam, bam, bam. I mean, now when you open the door, according to Grandma, they'll leave.
Yeah.
And they don't. She starts screaming. Well, the other four that are in there, now they're shitting on the floor,
And not giving their milk down.
and then. You open the door to come in, and she's like, "Get on in!" It's like they won't come in. It's like she helped like once or twice, and I'm like, no, we can do this.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work. There's a lot more work with her there than it was without her there.
Yeah.
Jay, I don't know if you remember, but I think you learned something from Grandma, and that you wanted to play on me one time because. When I'd be down there by myself because you'd go up to get away from it, and then you'd yell, and all the cows would poop at the same time.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. Yeah.
But you had to clean the barn.
Yeah, well, you always had to clean the barn too, so
Before you left.
you try not to do that.
Make them-
Yeah.
Yeah.
But once in a while, it was a good.
And the barn was, where you stood below it, so when they started doing that, it all
It
came
slashed
right
right up into
Yeah.
your face.
Oh, I remember so many times you turn your head trying to get away from it.
Yeah.
And then you get ready to go to school.
Yeah.
And you didn't have
Without
time
a
to take a
shower.
bath.
Yeah, well, there's no, all we have is a bath.
Right.
Yeah, which you can wash it off your face, right? But it's hard to get out of your hair.
Right.
There's always the smell of the milk barn. too.
Right.
Well,
Well, I
you're
know.
just grateful they're not pigs
Yeah.
at that point.
I know there had to be a lot of days when I went to school smelling like the barn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, remember anything about the house? Everybody remember rushing down to get warm in front of the fireplace?
Oh, yeah.
Because it was cold. There was no heat.
Remember when you were sick, and they put Bengay all over your
And those
chest
Sticks.
and
Vicks.
wrap you up in
Vicks.
hot
Hot
flannel
flannel. Hot
Vicks.
all over, and then
Vicks.
give you a hot toddy.
Right.
Yeah.
And put you to bed. And it
Yeah.
It felt
was
so
great.
good.
It did feel
did
good.
feel
Yeah.
And we always put the kids in sacks. Everybody had a sack.
And you pinned it at the shoulders.
Pinned it at the
That
shoulders.
you sleep
so
in
that
every
they
night?
would
Yeah.
stay covered up.
All the babies had
because
sacks.
the babies wouldn't stay covered up.
Right. So
When it
they
was
had a
cold.
sack.
Yeah.
And every night you put the babies
In the
But you
sack.
know,
sack.
later on when
Yeah.
they divorced and we moved to Camdenton, and then they got back together, who else lived in that house? I mean,
Who lived there?
we
when they
lived in
left?
it for a little while, Kathy and I. You
I
did-
lived in it after my house burned.
And didn't some of Uncle Raymond's kids?
Yeah,
I
Butch
mean,
and
Butch
Linda
and
lived
Linda
there.
lived
lived in it.
Yeah.
Grandma
Linda
lived
lived
there
there.
for a while.
How about Johnny Bill? Did he live in there?
No, I don't think so.
Just Butch
I don't
and
think so.
Butch and Linda
Butch
lived
and
there.
Linda.
Grandma lived there, right?
Trish
Yeah.
babysat us when we lived there because I remember conversations Trish and I would have upstairs.
I remember the sunken bathtub upstairs
Yes.
for sure.
Right.
Who Trish babysat us
When
when
I
we lived up there.
Oh,
Because
okay.
I remember
But
sitting
you all
in
didn't
the.
live there very long.
No, not real long.
I don't remember.
The kids went to school. I remember the first day of school was there, and I don't remember how long.
Are we skipping the divorce?
No, we're getting to it.
Oh, yeah.
We did really good
Because it's
skipping
time for
it.
the divorce.
It's time for the divorce.
Time for the
Okay.
divorce.
Well,
Jay mentioned it a couple times.
right. Our father, Julius Henry, fell in love with a lady at church.
That sounds
She was
fun.
a neighbor, but he was the
Let's go to
superintendent.
church and
Yeah,
find somebody.
Find somebody else.
He was the superintendent of Sunday school, and she
Your
was
Sunday school teacher, wasn't it? Was she?
I don't
she
know.
was a Sunday school
I just
teacher.
know that her little girl and I had matching dresses and all these pictures of the two of us together. And
And you were
looking
the
a lot
same
alike. It was
age.
very suspicious. Yeah, so we were the same age.
And they looked alike.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did. They had the same coloring or whatever.
But all of you've done your DNA, so.
So
Well, she doesn't have any descendants apparently, so who knows?
she did, but they both died.
Yeah, both of her children are dead. I don't know if, I think her daughter, Debbie, had a child or two, I think. But they'd be out in California. I've never met them. But I don't
So
know.
yeah, it was not a good time, but
What year
we-
did they divorce?
well, I was a
62,
senior.
I was when I was a senior
I
in high
graduated
school.
in '61, and they divorced in the spring of
Yeah.
'62.
Yeah.
I was
So
six.
I was out of school, and I stayed at the farm with my dad, and I'll never forget the day they left. You know, I very rarely ever saw my mother cry. And in fact, I didn't see her cry when her mother died. I didn't see her. She was not a crier.
Well, we saw Dad.
Dad cried a lot, but she cried that day.
Yeah.
I
So-
saw her cry 2 times before she got old and sick.
Mm.
Yeah.
One time was when Glenn was in Arizona and she wanted to bring him home, and Daddy said, no, he hasn't been there long enough. He'll get sick as soon as we bring him home. We have to leave him there. She cried then, and then after we moved up on Corporal, one night she came in to my bedroom and she gave me her wedding rings, and she went back in her room and she cried for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
I
only
remember
time
that.
I've
Yeah.
ever seen her cry.
I think I was there that night too.
Yeah.
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 Is that where you all moved to when Aunt Grace went to Corporal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With
To
the
a house
kids?
on Corporal Street, yeah. But did you live there with us? I don't remember. I thought
did.
you.
Yeah, I had.
I lived there with you part of the time when I
Yeah.
went to Central then.
She and I went to Central 1 year. One semester we lived out with Daddy, and the other semester we lived out with Mother.
Okay.
Both of us.
You probably helped watch us sometimes.
Oh,
Most
we
likely.
helped watch you all the time. Gee. I was
She
going to
was
say
all
that earlier. You know, I had Connie. I took care of Connie. Nancy took care of Donna. We all took care of Jay and Tina. It was a constant, you know, make sure their hair was fixed before they go to church. Make sure they're, and then one day Nancy and I had Tina, and we were walking across the street.
No, that was J.A., but it was the day she was born.
No, Jay didn't lose his pants.
Did you?
Jay didn't lose his underpants.
Oh, okay.
Mother lost her pants.
All right,
No, it was Nancy, I think.
all right.
And we were walking across the street. We each had Tina by the hand, and she couldn't. She was slow, and we were pulling her
I'm like
along.
dragging my feet.
And she was dragging her feet, and finally we looked down. Her underpants were around her ankles.
Well, no wonder she was walking funny.
Yeah.
Well, the time I remember, we were leading J.A. around. It was like the day of, you were born in November, so it was the day of maybe Central's homecoming or something. We were all uptown, and Daddy was in the hospital. And Judy and I had hold of J.A. one on each side, and we looked down, and here he is asleep.
Yeah, we're dragging him. We were teenagers. We were worried about the boys and all this. We weren't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to pull my arms out of my
Right.
No wonder I have trouble with my
That's
shoulders.
right. Right.
Yeah.
Oh my.
So anyway, they moved to Corporal, and
My memory of that is I was on the bus on the way home to the old farm, and my friends, a couple of my friends said, "Hey, are your parents getting a divorce?" And I laughed and laughed and laughed. I was like, no way. I said, I have never even heard my parents raise their voice or argue. I mean, there's just no way. And so we get home. I'm in 5th grade, I guess, and Mother was there, and she said, "Kids, your dad's down at the barn, and he wants to talk to all of you." Okay. So we went down, and he told us that they were getting divorced.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah,
So someone else was talking about it for your friends to know.
exactly.
Somebody.
I think the whole town knew
They
it.
knew before.
Mhm.
They knew before.
On that, I don't know about you, Jay, but I didn't know they got divorced until
Until we moved
several
to town.
years later. I didn't know about it until several years later. All I knew is that we moved to town, and I loved being in town. It was
Me too.
great. It was fun.
No cows.
There were no cows to milk.
Right.
Had a bicycle.
Yeah, I had new clothes for the first time in a long time, you know. I remember Mother buying me a set of new clothes and nobody there to tell her that she was
She
wasting
couldn't
money.
Right.
And Daddy would still come around.
He came up there quite a bit.
Yeah.
He did. He was there quite a bit. I had no idea they were divorced. And then we moved to Camdenton, and he was back living with us. And I'm like, okay, we're back. And then a couple years after that, probably, it occurred to me that, during that time period, they were actually divorced.
Well, and then
Well, you should have known when you went
to the wedding.
Right.
Right.
When they
We
got
all went
remarried.
to the wedding.
No, there's
I
pictures of you at
I
the
was
wedding.
like 5 years old. I didn't know.
Again,
It was just
I
a ceremony.
I was gonna say
just
that.
a
I remember going to the
ceremony.
wedding.
And Russell and I was married by then, and Nancy stood up for them, and we all went to Jeff City, and they got married at the Christian church there.
So they got
went
married
I
and then
said-
divorced?
Sorry,
They
they got a
got
divorce. No, a little over a year later.
A
they
year
got
and a
remarried.
half later,
they
Okay.
got remarried.
because I was in college at Warrensburg, and I had been in college at Warrensburg a month or two, and so I knew some girls that lived close around me. And I remember when Mother called me that day and told me that they were getting married again, I went to my neighbor across the way and I knocked on her door and I said, "Hey, my mom and dad are getting married."
It's Missouri, it's okay.
Yeah, right. That's Arkansas.
And then we went down to Jeff City for them to get married, probably in 2 different cars because there was a bunch of us.
Yeah.
Because my roommate came home with me that weekend, and she was there, and Judy and Russell were married, and Mother went up to the door, and Daddy, they went up to the door, and they said, "We're the people that called you about getting married, and these are our children."
Yeah. And when
About time.
but they were married. This lady that he fell in love with, he moved her down to the Lake of the Ozarks and got her a place to live there. And
It was a different house than what we lived in.
oh yeah, it was an apartment. I know kind of where it was, but I don't like to think about that too much. But anyway, they and he would go see her then part time, not. And I really truly believe that he never stopped loving my mother. I know he didn't. But I also know that he fell in love with that woman. I know
He
that.
was very infatuated
He
with
was.
her.
Right.
But it didn't take but 2 or 3, 4 months maybe. That one time he went and she was with someone else. I mean, I don't know if it was just that one time or if he heard about it and then the next time and after that he left her alone, and that's when he started, of course.
That was the end of that.
That was the end of that period.
Yeah.
He never went back to that again. So it wasn't too long, but anyway, it happened.
So
It happens. to a
And
lot
when
of
he'd
people.
look back on it, he would say it was the greatest mistake of his life.
I thought it was the greatest too, because he became nicer.
He did. They both became nicer. They
Yeah.
both were obvious of each other instead
Yeah.
of
They didn't take it
But
for
you know,
granted.
7 kids and
in 14 years, that's a big stress to put on any couple.
On any couple.
And going broke, basically.
And going broke.
He basically went broke during that time with that job that lost him all that
I
money.
remember
The job up
driving.
at St. Joe,
Mhm.
yeah.
Shirley and I were with him, and he
Yeah.
drove over 100 miles an hour on that old Kaiser or whatever it was.
Right.
Scared us to death.
Right.
And meanwhile, he was crying half the time, and
Yeah.
I mean, he was losing his.
Yeah.
Not doing
Losing
Losing
everything.
shit. That's for
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
It was a hard time.
it was a
for him.
hard time, very hard.
I'm sure, but you know what? When we lived on the farm, that was kind of I don't know how to describe it. A little bit of a crappy house,
Oh, it was, definitely.
Well,
and
You mean
then
the
and
old
then
farmhouse?
yeah,
yeah,
it wasn't
Except for
a
the
very.
kitchen.
It wasn't. Yeah, it had a nice
Yeah.
kitchen. They added that on. The rest of it was just an old
Yeah.
rundown house. And then when they divorced and we moved to town, that was a pretty neat house.
Yeah, it was
Remember those
beautiful.
tile fireplaces and all that?
Yeah, that
It
was a
was
cool
kind of a neat old house in
It
town.
was.
It was.
I love the
And
upstairs.
then when they remarried and we moved to Camdenton, we had that big rock house. I mean, that was
Yeah, it was great.
that
Yeah.
was pretty nice.
Yeah.
And then after they were there 4 years, we moved back to a trailer.
Yeah.